the Shumon Sojan we Sojawayon la Tandi data, Denge condition de la Tanda de Nanjuda Terry Pargi, Kamanagi Yoba in the Digi, Dolengi, the Bangshi Dolia, they will Luyu Mamut Tizam Ringlia, the Yetsugi, the Nanjuda Nanjuda Terry Pargi, Doleng, Tremor, the Hondo, subjoined the Yurimushu Nayore, Dina. Now, Gurim Leda Tabar Terry Bata Nanju Pargi, Tajo, the Shejo, Jejo, Tumbig, Nedu Ketchuri, Karsi Yunas, and Tedaya, Tajo, the Shejo, and Jeju Midimbeki, Nedu Ketchuri and Karasi Mediji, Suronan CD and the Tabdina, and Geshe Tempa Lada, and Kawan Kisma, number 9, and Kizimadiwana, Kizimadana, and Geshe.
So, this question is primarily for Geshe Tempa Phakchok, and if we have time, then we would like to hear a response from Professor Chris Impey also. And the question is that since you have been part of this kind of dialogue between science and Buddhism for a very long period of time, and so based on your understanding and based on your experience, what is the most important common thing that both science and Buddhism agree upon, and what is or what are the things that they do not agree at all?
Nambe tseri shungda ane nujobe tseri shungi nane ta tucho do bote kare pedon do shibaina kazan semda soge ane dolinga kyamurum je ka karna sena ane kyamurum je la ya karsore ane 다 동의기 안에 꼴라 다 동의 현구나 타만 양쇼 가르여서 네 두스 되었거든 아니 경고놈이 가르송에서나 아니 저랑 콘돔 피식 다셨어 두스가나요 지선 zaman 다 가서 걸 단당 가서 동의 남샤기 꼴대당 안에 콘돔 피식 니보드나라 안에 튼자 빼미식이다 튼자 식심 보든지 여사래 일하바도 단다 까마 두den라게 줄샤야기 다 네 대대나라 안에 시바이나 양티세 오시킨 거래 다당나시 다잉에 공도 쉬이 로인이게 안에 원바 저나라 만서 그는 나의 공부세대 안에 간데시 요래 디난게 둘서서 착당 간데 요래세 디거때 로인이게 원바 저난게 원배 중도서 나라 송샤야 돼서다 세력비 등상 안에 배 온자 세력인 속이 안에 샤샤니거든 직보치 강도스 요래 디기데 가서 그랬다 안에 다단 대천배 안에 튼배리 망보 요래 디기데다 가서 그래 튼배 배전라고 지 독서래 되어래 다 다긴게 미투바 세팅에 다긴 건도 쉬어이 안서 안보투 캬겨래 세력비 안보 나마도 안보투바 세트 다와진데 켈링겨 말에 디게대야 미투베 안에 신시도 쉬어이나 독서래 되어래.
So when we talk about the similarities between Buddhism and science, recently when I was attending the Mayan life in Dharamsala, and at that time His Holiness response to one of the questions, he says that if you wanted to understand the concept of emptiness or the shunyata or the tongpa nyi, then you have to learn quantum physics. And so His Holiness sees similar points or the similarities between quantum physics and the concept of emptiness in Buddhist traditions. This is one example of where Buddhism and modern science meet on a similar point of view. And then also in the presentation I talk about the 5 senses. And in the Buddhist text of Abhidharma, which is taught by Vasubandhu, one of the Buddhist scholars in the past. And he had talked about the sense faculties, for example, like hearing, and there's a similar description of this kind of sense faculties from both neuroscience point of view and also from the Buddhist traditions. And so these kind of similarities are there. And then when we talk about the things that is not go along with between science and Buddhism, there are examples, and one example is that as I had mentioned during my presentation, in science we don't talk about the 6th sense, And in Buddhist tradition, we talk about the sixth sense, which is the sense of consciousness or the mental consciousness.
So, in my experience teaching Buddhist monks cosmology, it's an easy thing to do for one reason, that's to do with the monks themselves, their qualities as learners, but also because many parts of the tradition, their Buddhist tradition, are in harmony with most ideas in modern cosmology.
Pebeki anita tajun sol ngek tusma tsenrik lobje chivi kapsula ane lobje chia di ane lela ucha yungdus lela ucha guya jumzenji khawatu du yorsla bena ane lobje chizeki ane tajun quran so tangbungene ane chika shin ki neze to yode yinchida tegana shin ane quran so ki gyunga yobeki ane ta chik shunglu den zo nanglo la ane chika tsenrik dan tumbeki ane rodang khrik ma ushu yode yores.
But if I was going to pick one particular thing, I would pick the idea of interdependence. Science has progressed very far, but whenever science puts a particular lens or window on nature, usually something is missed, because everything from biology to cosmology is multi-scale, operates on very many different scales, and the scales are connected or interdependent. So that's a very strong message out of science that's very harmonious with Buddhism.
Chizada denjeke ane tunju ke ane pechara pa chik shewi mena ane tendir ke namsha seyati ane chadi gyores. Chizada nangju ke shung ke nanglo ane tendir ke namsha chik shedi gyo nashi ane chik ngazu ke tsenri ke nanglo la pecha shawi mena ta chik jengwe tsenri do shim bena dik nanglo la jengwe tsenri ke lobsen denzo ane chik tseshi rimba mandawa mangbu chik tol ma goshe gyache ane deshi gya yungu yore den yimbena denjeke ane tseshi rimba mandawa yowa denzo penzu ane shiuji ke ane dewa yo dewa chikla chik tenchi ane deshi gya goya chadi yore cheza ta denjeke ta chik tendir ke rodan denzo ane nangju ke shedan dida ane chik tandan tsenri ke nanglo ane chik shedan denzo chikwa cha yungu dus.
And the specific area where perhaps there is no overlap or agreement at the moment is the idea of reincarnation, because science does not provide an understanding or mechanism by which there's any transmission of knowledge or information or continuity between the atoms of someone who died and the atoms of someone who comes after, or some creature who comes after.
Yang member mena ane tumon ki ane dozu mewe ki ane nezu ji karchak dus labim bena ane kewa ngaji ki ane namsha rotan di cha yung dus ane ji thande ki cha la ane ji tsenri ki regwe ki shungnu ki nanglo la ane ji thanda yoshin bi ki ane mi chik ane dishin do du zambala ane dine ta di ki thubje ki ta ji dunren din zu ne ane nezu ji ane maung bi ki kewa chime ki ane ta mi na re khansa simje khaya rong ji la ma doya yobe ki nezu ji ane deshi jagaya ki tablam yo mares.
Dr. Dolma, do you have anything to add about okay. Next question.
Tuan ini gigi nombor siala jadi disanta ani risa chiri bigan chiri la tene ani zalin daleje bi gatsi do kama su ta tunglen de ba nya ba de shitu shingare yin za ta de pe lo ni to nga ja gan hyan la ani su ji ji ani jite ko tunglen de ba sun ba de yin za ne zin de ni de ji de ba ba khen le ta bo ana khen le na chata khen le hote.
So in science, through modern technology, we managed to discover a number of galaxies and different number of stars. And as in the same way, in the 2,500 years back, Buddha, when he taught his philosophical traditions, he said that there are countless number of universe and world systems. So can we consider these two things as kind of a point of agreement? Or if yes, then how you will going to describe that kind of agreement?
we've talked about this a few times among the Geshes and in class, as well as I can understand it, the Buddhist concept of many worlds or multiverse, multiple universes, is most analogous to galaxies in physical cosmology. And it's quite a reasonable agreement. It even extends to the notion of sentient or intelligent life in these entities, because in the Buddhist many-world philosophy, there's the idea, I think it's called a trilocosm, which is about 1 billion world systems over which a Buddha consciousness has their domain. And the astronomers' likely number of Earth-like worlds that could host intelligent life is about 1 billion in a galaxy. So the numbers almost match. And so in my mind as an astronomer, the Buddha consciousness is the most intelligent, advanced civilization among the many Earth-like worlds in a single galaxy. It's kind of a striking agreement, actually. It's maybe conceptual, but it actually fits.
And tanda Sanjay Gishung Nanola, and tanda Jigden Naso Yamena, and Jigden Chawataja, say, any community, the Tiganashi, and Tandangazu, and Jik Tindu Karje, Nangol Imbina, and Jik, and Guziganzo, and Termumbo, Yuviki, any Kejachi Yores. Jazan di Indu Zambala, and Jigam, Tanda Jigden Chawataja, Seadi, Kizing and Tanda Guzik, Galaxy, like Denzul Shab Imbina, and the Dendek, any Tanda Sangi Shuna, Sheviki, any Tanga Dida, Tiganashi, any Anzu Tanda Karje, Nalola, any Guzik, Tanga Kazu, Dinini, the Tangdi, Kalagansam, and Petata New Shuch, the Yungures. Tiganashi, any Jig Dendeki, any Jigde, Tigams Yoba, Denzuk, Nalola, and Jig Nazule, Shambik, Seso, Doa. Ani USIA Keja, and Nanjula Shigi Yovanashi, and Jixeric Nangloria, Dindik Yoviki, Anita Soba Chedi Chegures, and the Rusun Stratigana, Shita, the Nick Nangola, and Chigamta, Sanjay, Tamji Chambers, Chigovina, and the Negita, and Chigan come Dick Nangoni, any chicken, and Doveki, any parents, civilization, Dick Nangoni, the Rivate Toshuru, and Chayung Gredusons.
Tas so ane samzu shuwaina tandanga nambi shunang la ngazo ane zamling chewa thakya sananda ane tongsung gi tong chomo se ki ane te khande sunggur shuwaina ling hi che ane rirap che dola che ane changbe jikten sana changbe jikten sana ne samde tangbo menje an diki dela ane kasore ling hi be jikten ki kam chik sha 전례계 링시비 직된지 감 찍디 안에 지히체네 안에 동담발라 안에 동담부 직된지 감세 전례 안에 동담 그 직된지 감데 지히체네 안에 동담발라 안에 동반면 직된지 감세 전례계 동반면 직된지 감데 지히체네 안에 동담발라 안에 동숭기 동천부 직된지 감세난다 잠링 제와 타자스나 તે 찍바래 두시 지당도부터 두스래 전례인데 잠발라 잠링 제와 타자스나 갈라고르스나 동숭기 동천부기 직등이 감되라 링시비 직등이 감세디 제와 탁게 요래서 그래 다 아니 디숭와 대당 단당한수 안에 배나 구지 겨보나라 까마 안에 들부 망보 요래 안에 구지 ngazoki ane kusi di jablola ane kusi mangbo yorese ke shedang yobote zodu samzu chewa na timbu minda jere samdo karesana chojin karesana zishi korang dagyo mare ngazoki ane kasore zamling chewa thasha ke zishi de karesana lingshi be jiktenji kam chi korang zigo lingshi be jiktenji kam sana lingshi rirab dolatu ane changbe jikten di menje de la ane lingshi be jiktenji kam se jiksi 덴데지기 안에 잠능 제와 타자스나 동숭기 동천보기 안에 직den이 감들라 덴데기 제와 타자 요래서 거래 다 뒤에서 삼발티 뒤잡아 대당 다 빼는 거 보기 잡아 파게 되게 세와이나 안에 구지 겸모 뒤게 나라 안에 카르마 제와 망보 요래서다 콘수기 구지 겸모 나라 카르마 틀부 망보 요래서 나주 가르스나 닝시비 직den이 감 제와 타자 요래서 나도 삼발다 제와 탁야 망보 당 망보 여바점 tumbare 이나 지시양 민다래 지루 지당양 민다래 라그면도 상도 지상다 콘소양 만족이 동성기 동정모델라 안에 닝시베 직등이 감 제와 타자 탐바 요서 장가다다 시거봐 군소기 변나 구지 겸모나라 까르마 템보 망보 요르스도 잠발라 통두베 까르마 들어봐 통마두베 까르마 가서도 가서 요러 대양 안에 변나 초지가 더버지가 안에 배 세겹세 초 대나라 통투브는 게 안에 까르마 더버 가서 요메지 딜 직지시 안에 디당 안에 초심바 잠발라 안에 리중기 돈 셰바야나 다 까르마 템보 망보도 들에서 장가장면 러상도 제가 군이부터 다 망보 요바티 tum바사 마도 지시당 지당당 상마데스 라그면도 잠자데 소소소 삼수이야 믹스에게 된데 안에 흉점부 된데다 개 통마서 이나 동성부 동점부 지당다 다나시래.
Oh, karma. Karma, you have to be good. It's a lot.
I'm good, that's why I can pass my job to Geshe.
So I'll do a rough translation. What Geshe was basically saying was from his perception, in terms of the number, we might be coming quite close. But that actually does not lead very much to the similarity. Because number one, the very basis of counting is completely different. Because in the Buddhist system of counting, that you use the 4 continents, the Mount Meru and those other stuffs, and then say this is one system, and then you multiply it. And then finally it came to like 10 million fold world system and so forth. So the basis of counting, and then multiplying the same thing, that forms the world system, which is totally different. And then from the point of view of the science, I think every time you see through your telescope, you find this much star, and then when the instrument becomes bigger, you find new discoveries. And there may be many other stars which are not within the purview of your system. So there are the differences in terms of the basis of the counting and the process of counting.
We'll take one more question from the Geshes, and then we'll take one of the questions from the audience that I've received.
Member Sonam Dolma Dengzang and Zambuling Dengala, and Nazamambuji Leguere, Lebanon Choton Ani, Mongo Cheban, Tablam Mambuji Giver. Inaya Naza de do Ani Kaduina Maru Duere, then do Gunzende Kanijinas Nije.
So the question is that these days, even though there are different types of diseases, and even though we managed to develop methods to cure and treat these diseases, we are experiencing more and more number of new diseases. So how you can respond to that kind of situation?
Thank you, Congressman. Nashire Nenam Kungi Kunichu with the Tame Tomato Marija Maripa, Mabam Patong to Tunga Tarba Yomara, that the Chiche. Ani, the Chera, the Shuvrajana, Gisla, Sumanation, Mongo Mangu Chugores, Remonere, Mongo Mangu Chugore, Manzo, Jilang, and Shizen, Tanana, Gunere, Minana, Senere, Dawanashi, Ra, Ineta, Senere, then Yamdolaya, Jolam Lobege, Mangu Chungora. 다 이내 다디 지당 알체 다 팅사 아니 지당 기sla기 팅두기 다 칼로르 니림게 나자 망부 중고라 팅자다 잠을링는 가지고 강에 슈주베기 라 지당 나자 근댕게 나자 든주다 두스두스 니레 지니 도도고레 민주 용고레 탑람 망부 여라 다한다 자다게 아니 니림 든줄라 아니 니네 가르슈고르라나 한다 옹고 추고르데 옹고 추고르 벤차샤나다 렉두 니네 렉두를 속아도지나 옹고 점ning 기지가는 옹고 숙충부 주고르 시제 고도베 숙충부 주고르데 이네 나자 시라페 주고르와 온데 가르 슈브라지는 아주 미슈나나 니림 쪽에 있듯이 슈르 니림 쪽에는 가르소 온나나 아는가게 뒤 타말데도 미주기 자왈로과 아니 직 탐지 초벌 속바다 아 마모칸도도 초베 아니 코르요기 아니 심보든도 초베게게 안 중고레스 다딜러도 아니 자와 초바 수줌 초바 탐지 tum발로도 거기 아침으로 안주 먼저 안주 베게 나니 시도 대자 말에 아니 안주 미슈나 가르송은 리빠짱베 쯩버꾼라 죽 레저 혼자 튕겨배우체 시제윤의 망보체 창의 망보체 튕의 망보체 뒤제 망보유디 안 담아다 망보체 시시니라 안 나자 망보체 사드고 다는 아주 시다 페이지 나자 망체 치모의 망보체 삼모의 망보체 삼모의 망보체 사 디겐베 나자 총되거라 지다 고도열 다 지다다 nganzu mingi laga chishingi chuchu guwa na ngawa podo newa la ro chidingi ngaranzu ya naza khaju naudo haku gore shingore hashinba mare ine ta nganzu marik bekyo naore nyumungi wang chuk cheta naore ngongo da dirik na mangbo haku gore te ina ta dunge na kowegi chunyi ra longlong bare da ta ngo inde ro shuna dige na pajana.
So I will try to do the translation also. Ultimately, the root of all diseases also, as I have said in the presentation, is because of our ignorance. As long as there's ignorance with us, we're going to face different kind of diseases. And in Tibetan tradition, we have a saying that if a horse is sick, then it must be because of too much of racing or running. And if a person is sick, then it must be because of too much of food. And because of our behavior and because of our wrong choice of food and way of life, there are diseases in our daily life, and we have methods to cure and also prevent many of these diseases. And in recent times, we are facing more and more number of diseases caused by viruses. And for example, the AIDS disease, which is a big problem for all of us, and at different levels from national to international level, there are educations and other methods to prevent and eradicate this kind of diseases, but still we cannot solve this kind of diseases completely, and that is all because in our medical text it was mentioned that at the end of the time, when at the decoratory period of time, people may develop new ways, and people may learn new ways to do wrong behaviors and engage in wrong actions. And because of all these things, it will bring in new diseases which ultimately become a problem for us. So ultimately it falls on how we live, what we think, and how we'll eat. Yeah.
I'll also add a little bit more to not only do lifestyle choices perhaps cause increased incidence of various disorders, but as the population ages, from a neurological point of view, diagnosis of these diseases such as Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, these are diseases mainly of the elderly. And so as the population as a whole gets older, we'll see more and more diagnosis of these diseases. Another disease that will be very common in the coming years is stroke. As the population ages, we'll see a large number of patients with stroke, which is a blocking of the blood supply to the brain. And that is estimated to be almost of epidemic proportions. And so ways to prevent that, as Dr. Dolma said earlier, preventative medicine is very, very important. So if you can prevent the disease before it becomes a disease, that is much better than trying to cure the disease in the first place.
Chisa ani tanda amchi lagi tanda chiga seju ten tanda denzu da neju denzu ko thola tanda ani chiga Kirtan anzo nembesh yavim bena kirtan anzo ane chika misia kiyon koran dusya ane ge yung du zambala ane ge droya di koran ki gyumzen tene ya naza mangu shriji yung di yores pecha shavim bena ane chika tempa nyam droya ki naza da tigana shin chika akangla tenso tarsi gya ki ane nazi rik di do chisa tenso ane mangu chik ane ko mi ki nazu dan jawa yuwa songzang ko loze chik le yung du zambala ane naza tenso ko rangshin ki yung di ya chak yores tigana shin da chika tingdu ki chala ane chik pecha shan tanda manzu di sadip sigyorwa chesa stop la denzo and dindri ki naze rigdi and thande ki chala ta chik di ko kharcha di yores la bena pete gone dindri nangshin pete ko shu chita chambel ro de kine ju chek yores chesa ta dindri ki sane sia dia zo kharcha di yores la bena ane chik ning ne ya level la tha tang gu yo songza ane di ki ane thakza denzo ane de ro ya da thakza denzo ane kyen sho ro ya dindri ki to ne ane ta lebe ki la ga ya bo chema to chik kangye the de jo ro chinzu na za rig denzo yore chesa ane denzo ane chik kyota chigule ha chik ane ngongo dan jewe ki ane ta me da ngongo dan jewe ki ane ta chik so ta denzo la ane thonang che ke cha cha yores.
We'll come back to the panel in 1 minute, but I have a question that is also directed to Dr. Dolma. Missing from your presentation was any mention of surgery. And the question is, in the history of Tibetan medicine, are there any cases of surgery taking place? And if so, can you elaborate more on any surgical aspect of Tibetan medicine? And maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Amji Sonam Dolma lins tanji tamji kapsla phebek mek nanglola shakju cheya yome di kole ankami mindus chesa dijik songronans.
Thank you very much for the wonderful question. This is one section I really miss, and I very strongly wanted to speak on that, but sheer shortage of time did not permit me to speak on this very important matter. Well, of course, healing of wounds, which is basically surgery or practice of surgery, is one of a very important category of Tibetan medicine. As I was telling about the major subjects of Tibetan medicine, we grossly categorize Tibetan medicine on 8 branches, 11 sections, and 15 categories and 4 compendiums. So in the 15 categories, healing of wounds is one section which is so elaborately explained in Tibetan medical text that you all would be stuck with wonder when you see the compendium, how rich it is. I can surely say that out of all these 156 chapters that is in 4th Tantra, healing on wound is the largest and has the greatest number of pages out of all 156 chapters, believe me. So this shows how profound, how rich culture we have in healing wounds, which is nothing but managing of injury and falls and taking out foreign objects from our physical body. We have wars experience. We still have living people who have practiced surgery, cataract removal, removal of fluids from the cardiac and from the pleural effusion. All this practice, we still have living people who have actually done this work. But unfortunately, the demand of the population, the nature of the community has turned out into such a state, and also the availability of the easy accessible clinical and hospital of the Western allopathic medicine, we are happy with that. We are very fortunate to have it. So it's so accessible that people really don't give time for we Tibetan doctors to really practice our surgery. So it's not that we Tibetans don't have this knowledge. We have a very rich knowledge. I'm happy to say that, but unfortunately, I'm very shameful. And it's really big shame that we really don't have good practice at this moment. But before 50, 60 years, we have a very rich practice, and we still have a couple of these living people who still can speak on their own words about how they practice surgery. And also in the second Tantra, which is the explanatory Tantra, in Tibetan we call it Shigyu. So we have one chapter which is only dedicated to the explanation of various surgical instruments, various tools that are used in the surgical intervention. So all I can say to whoever the question may have posed, that thank you very much for putting this question, for giving me this opportunity to tell you about this, that we do really have a very rich culture, but unfortunately at this moment we have not good practice, and this is something which is still living and living dormant in a medical text. And let me also tell you, before I forget this, because I have seen a research paper written by some Japanese scientists that during the 19th century, all the prevailing medical system at that time, only the Tibetan medical text has the greatest explanation on the practice of surgery. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The Tundushmishi Shugo Samarero, Jeza Tuzu Mongus, Jeza, the Jeda animation Kinalola, and the Pumek, mention Kinalola, and Tanda Shakju, and Nezudi, and Mewa Mares, Yores, Jeda and Chiganzu Jushi Kinalola, and Leupage, Gadan up to Madus, Yoredinano, Leukashe, and a co Shakju Rankache Dures, the Shakju Sedus and Balachik, Ma, Suesha Watenzo, sort of Chiachic, Jalasu, Serala, so was so there in the Yobenet, so turned down the Anitic Dabion Chumadenzo, Anitic, Jotapchia, and so Chad Yorichenzo, and so Mewa Mariores. Imbina Anico Tandekichala, Jikta Nojoki, any menu de Tarso Chembucha, Tianashi, any D, Mitsangmala, and Kawadobi, Benachik Racho, Yubik, Kumzeni, and Chike, Pebeki, Membazola, and the Shakjuchi, Kogab, the Maravik, Kumzen, Tandek Nekabla, and the Consular Chikinyamu, Tianashi, necessary Demba Mewa, the Legic Chabri, the Imbina, long up to Jukuno, Tebimbina, and Jik Pebeki, Membatsuki, and Jik Shakjuchi, and Lamsudi, and Yodi Yores, Peja Jushin Nalon, and Jushi, Tapeja Niwa, is a Diki, and Jik Liuchik Chaza, and Jik Shakjuchitan, that Kola, and Yodi Yores, Chizajik Turab, Kurgubik, Nanglola, Kurguk Nanglola, and Jik Shakju, and Tevik, Nezu Mangshu, there's a Jik, any Pebek, any mention to Irapta, the Lugu Yores, any Tiwachik the user.
Tamal touch the Shuadang, and drink out to the Mchilali, Tanashupi, Mchilagi, any Kalabna Kapso. Ngaranzo Pege Tachik Ningun Down, Tidigor Mambushi Song. Any Tangi Tivati Karichari Yursina, Chidang Ngaranzo, the Pege, Minjeswa, Big Lalinti, any Kesin Zambeling Tola, any Tundoni, Tamaki, Muzin, Lalin Tok Tuyagi, Nekapchik, Chawina, any Tata Koranzo, Peju Tang Deagi. The Chuka Mambuchi, the Sogan Naloni, Mixi, Naransuji, Pugiswa, Rodu Rumbu, but taking Nani, Tata Koranso, Chijaga, Kal Mengi, the Mixi Carriores, Tindachirangi, and Tuxe, Kamesemina, Shimjo Mambuchi, Yachiran, Perganang, doing so at Big Gala, Yamushida, Yunjin, do the Korji, Young Geneso Savant, Zolma, Sunya Unasams.
Kishla, Chitang Yamyo the Stame, Congivechi. Ine Kislagi, Cantinam del Le, Shuela, Chitang, Handatang answer the Chignic captured Nedangal, Yam Tapakal Yore, Inahang, Zambolina captured Nedam, Mango, Yuvenanet, and Nanans, Mandaji Chatter, so consecutive from which cutting re, and answer Chukuju, cutting re, Sonza Kete. Tandanganzo something Yongdala, Ganzo Sorik, but some Mare, Ayurvedic, Chinese medicine, Unani, Tinde Mango, Mele, Mede or Mango Yore, complementary and alternative medicine, and Ariki, Shunaneta, things like this, Mulian Tostos to war. The Inea, crimes, Chulu, Ming, Mulian, the Capio, Nashida, Yomate, Ineta, something Mima Mango Chigi, Della Gamuchi, Gamuka, Tagas, Shingo Marta. Kayo layo pendo yoza gamyo chini dela mangboji longsu judi konso shungi yamachiran je kegore benchashana chilo men thona khoranju ani khare diora nyo kharsa insurance la khalare kista gelen domaro ra la insurance kan di chikche do nganzo mishikenjara chuna aniya digala di Kinsun Chinese Toga on Dindeki, Chilumen Delta Yorte, Ani Chik Sharjo Rikbaine, Ming Look Shembat in Zola, Megang 이네 내와 망고지기 아니 칠루맹기 카요 라요기 자웨네 상라지 메와다 다가 나자 고냄스냄 심베기 겜벨라타네 슝기 아니 인슈런스기 토네 숭외든조 로그람 메네 소소 암바라네 야마 투네라 델라민주치네라 동거망고 메기 랑외네 가메네 민주 치디라 슝기라 팀지스니라 델라지 카야치 델라 냠시치 델라 토나 마치란지 케도 다 아리 슝도진 바라지나 다네시 유럽기 슝게 망고 손자 디나네 소르괴게 칼라칸잠지 콤발레디워 다벤차시나 데베 로징이스 기 공개 까메 슈라지네 뉴동 굴로라 탄다바동 안저 캡줄레네 롱업중 아단스토레 갸가 슝게 소르괴 문지 메바 라 이네 뉴동 굴로라 갸가 슝기 아니 문지 나라 라 안 디안나시 다 갸갑 셴발레 무투니 두스 두레스 니게레와 첨부이라 다 게시 티원나마나시 게슬라이 케데 tamsangi dindegi neda cha dindegi nganzula dingja khori chemboji rawajina pebegi mengi sori be cham khare thabe yerlara tomna thabe yore gyawashinu tomna thabe yore khare yore shemba kheshio mare chinju midda nganzu lung nazla istoga nganzu lung nazа chi nganzu khora mewa nganzu lung nazа nangla lung rik yawa thujara sumsher 야와 조절하고 숨 짜외가 내려다 제라가는 시험에 제라가는 신나다 단대기 시계자시요 나가랑 거란데 삼는단다 딘저 상황 언제 랭 가리 개개래 벤 차신다다 딩사 한다라 또 크라 숨바나시 알자이머 나자 라 체메기 나자죠라 징이래 나자시 아니 바가슨 잠다르게 나자 딘저 레글라라 무슨 롱다 대화배 전부 차대고라 먼저 농제지데 알자이머 네월레 서갑 레리게다라 푸 모마신이 론이 슈조교 서갑 갸네 서갑 도스코도 푸밍 된로라 가지게 네 하르강메다 네 하르강마다 네와라 커교키니 용교 건다 다 콜로갈 티니 용교라 비문나 암조왕겔라이라 서데교니라 커교요니라 야랑 콤보병이 중어라 간난게 나라랑이 네와라 심나라라 네와 캔덤 차느라 리빈 맹가나치 스노던 맹가치 제메주 치마도니 네와야 빵가라 껴니 킬레니라 델레니라 상곰견이라 네와 마르도 콤바베네도는 와찬의 동바사리 감드로스 갖다 딘데다 좀 장나다 장제요 말라 다 롱주고 가라다 롱주고 가라 let's 터져라 다시 다 마슈라 슈저랑 안서 배바연이라 뽑아치고 해줘라
So we first need a translation of the question, and we definitely need a translation of the answer.
Question is that, of course, at the moment, there's no legal recognition of Tibetan medicine in the world platform. So if in case, we are lucky enough to have that kind of opportunity and we get such a lobby where we can really show our talent, how can Tibetan medicine contribute and how can Tibetan medicine really dance to the tune of the world is his question. So to answer that, I said, of course we are refugees, we are in a very pathetic state, but compared to other refugee community all over the world, due to His Holiness' blessing and a rich culture, Tibetan communities are not really in such a pathetic state. Having said that, if in case Tibetan medicine really get a platform where we can show some steps of a wonderful culture, then I just gave him the word that just believe me, there are billions and billions of things we can really do. And just one instance is recognition of lung energy in the body. How lung affects the physical body, how lung affects the mind, how lung affects the very functional properties of a physical and emotional nature. So we say that in Tibetan medicine, lung is one important factor, one of many, one important factor which is grossly categorized into 63 different diseases, which can be further classified into nearly 400 and something disorders. So this lung itself is enough to challenge the whole world. So I told him, I was just explaining him about some incident where, like you were just mentioning about Alzheimer, Parkinson. So we have many cases where Alzheimer, patient who was not able to recognize her son for the last 20 years. After giving a golden needle therapy, she immediately gave her son's name and came forward to embrace him. And then we have records of our senior doctors, like many personal physicians from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The patients brought to them on wheel, and after giving the golden hammer therapy, the patient just threw away the crutches and started walking. And my own experience, while I was working in the clinic in Simla, like there was a woman who came, he was carried in because he had some problem with the sciatica nerves, and she was not able to move at all for many months, and none of this hospital could help her. So she came in, was carried in. I gave her breast cupping, and then after just 15 minutes, she just walked out of my chamber, and she was so shy because she was carried in and she covered her head with the sari. So these are just some of the very small things which we can really show to the world. So I was just assuring him that we as a Tibetan should be proud. There are lots and lots of things that we can really dance to the tune of the world. Thank you.
And this is actually a follow-up question to what you just said. What attempts have been made to promote Tibetan medicine into Western society? And that's a question from the audience.
Well, to continue with that, and the two of the Tirisha, and that Benchashna Sorry, but and Zambulingi, Dingjana, and a Pegachi, Tablam Karanayaris, Sonza Dikanti, the two of the Len Shubrajina, Tapenchashna, then you come to Shuba Nashide, Garashung, Sori, Begi, Shung, the Mulena, but Tarangi can't catch him. Rang to David Lotigas, Nachima to Gyoji, that and the Chitura. Taganashi, thanking you, Kondu Shubanashi, Zambulingi, me, Manguchi, Kanye Dindelatanias, Painter, sorry, but the David Chatungi, Shajoki, Tsiri, Jemango, Tinzoki, Pembanashing, Azule, and Nimegi, Hujita Shargra. One Nashita, sorry, Becky, Kari, Tandapota means a Karichorlana, means a gangi. Benchashnata, Handa Garashungi, sorry, when we deny Le Shamde, Hale Mangushure. Chidan, Tomle Duna, Anganzulada, the speedy that Dinzo Kranzugi. Chepsi Betone Yajik, Shishita, Shueniam do Mangushure, de Rishungi, Gabjongane, Lapta Tangoshunere, Minzan Lapta Tango, Minjo Hantangoyne, Takjim Kantin Tangoyne, Never Tanga Tangoyne, Manga Tangoyne, Amji Tende Tangoyne, some Minzan Mato, Handa Kone, Ladar Kote, Speedy Kote, Aronajal Kote. Some answer capture Shun and Tengora. Sons are these some sorry, but the Giji Dinjagala, Leres, Dizamare, Minzagan Kanan water, hanging in shoe and shire, and Pugim hanging, and Pumela, Tangage and Zola, and Yimangi subjon soba, Yimachu subjon sobata, Ania, Tuzurini, Tamshana sobata, and Desamay Chigela, and Temdur Damanda. Titel, Sowata, and never did to Naeta, and thanking a condo, and Yamshima, which is championship, one the nation, and Lomnitsula Lopta Hata, Mangama, which in Yamdo Yamshi, and just Hama, and sorry, but some knitting janala, Begi, Tablam, Dinderes, Shuemba. So I make a translation of what I was saying. You already heard the question, so to comply with the answer, as I was just, maybe I forgot to tell you in the translation in my previous answer that we Tibetans are in exile for the last 50-something years, and it was only in 2009 that the Indian government legally recognized Sowarik by the Tibetan medical system. So this itself is a big achievement for us. And I was also telling them, let's take an example of United States of America. Now, it's been only a few years they have started the camp, complementary and alternative medicine. Why is this started? It's not because the American government or the White House is so enthusiastic about Tibetan medicine or the Ayurveda or Chinese medicine or blah, 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 whatever it may be. It's because the people, even though the government do not cover the expenses of all these traditional medicines through insurance, they are so much benefited with these conventional and alternative medicine that they are willing to pay out of their own pocket. When there is such a sheer number of people who are benefiting from all these medicine, inclusive of Tibetan medicine, so government ultimately is compelled to set up this body, conventional, complementary and alternative medicine. So this is also a one good green signal for the future prospect of Tibetan medicine. So now the question is, what is Tibetan Menzikang? Probably as I'm coming from Menzikang, this question is posed to Menzikang. So what is Menzikang actually doing to prove our authenticity to the world? So when we were applying for the recognition of Sowa Rigpa in the Indian government, in the parliament, when the bill was actually passed in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, of course, the local Indian community, a group from the Ladakh and Spiti and Arunachal, they did play some role in the political frontier, but the cultural baggage or the cultural value which actually substantiated for the passing of this bill in the parliament is because Menzikang provided all the numbers of clinics, all the numbers of patients that we have been, as I told you in the slide. In last year alone, we have rendered service to more than 6 lakh of people. Not to mention all this nearly more than 18 million Indian rupees, which we provide free and concessional medicine to these lot of people. And we have been conducting 5-day courses, 10-day courses, basic courses, advanced courses, intensive courses, and hourly basis courses to all the enthusiasts of Tibetan medicine who do not speak Tibetan. And another important thing is in the regular medical courses, we have also allocated 2 special seats for foreigners who are interested to study Tibetan medicine as a regular student. And I'm very happy that, of course, we do have many Mongolian, Kalmyk, Russian, Korean who study Tibetan medicine so far, but since the last batch, we have 1 American and 1 Russian who sat on the entrance examination like all other regular Tibetan, gave the Tibetan entrance text, got passed, and now they are regular students. So these are some of the many steps. And Menzikang also makes a lot of outreach programs to Europe and America and conducts a lot of exhibition on Tibetan medicine to have better awareness and education on Tibetan medicine. I think this suffices to answer your question. Thank you.
And this is another question from the audience, and I'd like first Chris to answer it, and then if the Geshes can also answer this question, please chime in. So the question is, in astronomy, 95% of the universe is said to be made of dark matter and dark energy. How does science describe these, and how does Buddhism describe these?
So gain Tericton gain Chris Imbila Garochis, Tiganasheni, Gelaporang Suela, and Nanchu, Kindubasul Digola, share your women, some to share Rochis, Tiwa the Caris Lavimbena, Karjeri Big Nalo dos Nazuke, Shedu Zambala, and then Azuk and Jigden come the Gaja Gubju Konga, and then Mingube Nubada, and then Mingube Pimzesia, Dig Troop Shower, Sigdus, Chazada day, and Deshe Kadis Yagin base, Chazada Tericton Deshe, Nanju, Ton Deshe.
So the fact that astronomers only know 5% of the universe is what keeps some of them humble. If you were a parent and you had 20 children and you only knew where 1 child was, you'd be a very bad parent. So we're pretty bad astronomers if we only know 5% of the universe.
Cheza ani karje rebe kanalo la angan jigden kam ki ani thupcha ji kanalo ni ani jajanga ma do singyo mares cheza di kharda dawres labim bena ani pawaji la pu ni shu thamba yobim bena pu jik kol ma do pu churgu kha kor la khaya singyo mares cheza pawa dugja simbanang si ani karje rebe de ani cha sama mares.
So dark matter is a hypothesis that has emerged over 40 years to explain the fact that galaxies seem to be held together by matter, by mass that is not visible, but is subject to the conventional law of gravity.
Cheza mingube any pemje seadi any jadang ani sinik nanglo chosha jires. Cheza chosha di kaduchi chongbres lamimana lo shibjus ngona chongmajigda ani dendeki ani mingube chosha di chegoya kimzen khawar tu yors lamimena ani chik tanda guzik da denju ki nanglo la ani chike thal yobeki karma du ani kora kortang dan tenshu kun rodang denzo ani namgyu ke ani tenshu nang shin ro de chila ani kima de la ani khaya ngobu khaya thongge mebe kine dan chik to ne ta chik yosare se ki ani chosha shibres.
So dark matter emerged as an explanation for why galaxies do not fly apart. But since then, with Hubble Space Telescope and very good telescopes, we have seen the deflection of light by gravity, as predicted by Einstein, from dark matter. So it's another reason to believe that it exists.
지선 대가나신 다 구직 된조 아니 남로도 카탐바 마이바 아니 시직도 아니 네와 송자 디 네와디 아니 명명비 뱀제기 체레스야디 아니 데시직 차기 요레스 대가나신 데시니와도 카르차기 요레스라베메나 덴데기 아니 명명비기 아니 뱀제 된조 년코르네 아니 칠로네 용베기 왜도 좀 드라이브 갑슬라 왜 돌람 껴두고 요레스 지선 단 돌람 껴와디 아니 왜 명명비 뱀제기 누슈디 텐슈디 체와레스야디 데실리 요레스.
So we actually have two choices. We could say the theory of gravity, which is Einstein's theory, is wrong, or we can hypothesize dark matter. Now, Einstein's theory has not failed any test so far, so we choose to prefer the dark matter hypothesis. And in the manner of science, to test the hypothesis, the best guess is that the dark matter is a microscopic fundamental particle. And there are experiments operating right now that should detect this particle in the next 5 years.
지서다 딜라도 선발한줄 담가니 요레스. 야메나 아니 아인슈타인기 탄다 아니 지도름 남샤나 셰베게 아니 텐슈 그로다도 상마 케 렌타 메와 차이레스. 야메나 아니 탄다 디말렌 빈베나 아니 맹문베기 탄다 아니 뱀제 세야데 셰구 마르와스. 야메나 아니 맹문바기 뱀제 세야데 샤 구구 요레스. 제가 들었습니다. 단다바도 아니 명명비기 아니 뱀제치 니 요마데 니미나 아니 용규기 로nga sam기 나로라 아니 명명비 뱀제기 아니다 시듈 시로 제가 디 니에 기타 레와치 요레스.
My answer for dark energy can be very short. Dark energy is a hypothesis to explain the fact that the galaxies are moving apart faster and faster, that the expansion of the universe is accelerating.
그래서 더 명명비 누바스야디 가르충 가지는 총벌에서야 될라 아니 제시 tundush len tundush 미신 갱메스 지자디 카레슬라 메베나 지그단 감나로 교비기 구직든수 아니 갸제 두요레 갸제 도웨 마제 갸제 냐르세 디 아니 냐말레 아니 뇨르 두요레스.
Dark energy is much more mysterious. There's no other evidence for its existence, and the concept of dark energy does not fit at the moment into standard physics. So we are still trying to explain it. And if you have any explanations, please write on the piece of paper and give to me. You may get a Nobel Prize.
제가 아니 명명비 누바스야디 아니 명명비 뱀젤레 아니 고뇨다 얌셈바 차기 요레스. 제가 디 아니 수준기 공감생이기 아니 팀기 로당 토니 아니 데시게야지 아갸토야지 요마레스. 제가 기세디 데시 차상와들이 야고 게야요베나 단다 슈 줍시디간 티닝알 테로치스티스는 키란서 노벨 싱다라시 레스 디체트.
Are there any comments from our panel?
디골 직시 시엠베스.
야, 당이 자외선이 드니 체리비 타니 뭐보시 인가 좀 비주얼 야 말에 제발도 멍게비 베제 셔바 땡년반 제도 둥홀로로 파시 타니 드니 통유메 아 이베이네레 다당아랑 기 섬선은 멍게비 벤제서 간당 인지 지고요 세바이나 시당 반응구들 까마도 파시 지기 까대야 돼 자외선이 롱시 까대고 예방 인지 지고요 마도 저당 멍게비 벤제서 베제 주는면서 타니 메바이든 도돈들이 생각서 카즈지니 시에 토고요 말에 이내 이제 간다고 저가사기 고사텔로 니롱시 여방 인지 지고요. 디 롱디 파지 디 까마이 바이네레 디 구치 바이네레 데제가레 파지 마동케도 지지기 롱디 까디고 인지 지고요.
Even though in the Buddhist text there's we do not have a specific mention of dark energy and dark matter, but when we talk about the galaxies revolving around a particular point or staying together and not going away, and I believe, this is my personal belief, I believe that it is because of some wind energy that holds these galaxies together.